A high school teacher mocked the janitor with a calculus problem. Seconds later, the whole class was dead silent. It started on a Wednesday, the kind of day where the clock ticks a little slower and even the fluorescent lights feel tired. It was third period at Lincoln Heights High School, a mid-sized school tucked somewhere between the quiet backroads of Toledo, Ohio. The halls smelled faintly of cafeteria pizza and old textbooks. In room 208, Mr. Nolan Peters stood at the whiteboard, scratching out a calculus problem with a red marker that had seen better days. The class was dead silent, not out of interest, but because nobody had a clue what he was talking about. Mr. Peters, tall and in his mid-40s, had this dry, biting sarcasm that he thought made him clever. Some students liked him, others tolerated him, but everyone knew he had a habit of talking down to people without even realizing it. "All right," he muttered, tapping the equation twice with the back of the marker. "Who's going to take a stab at this?" Nobody moved. "Come on," he said, scanning the room. "Someone's got to have a brain in here." Still nothing. That's when the classroom door creaked open slightly. Standing there, mop in one hand and dustpan in the other, was Elijah Brooks, the school janitor. Mr. Peters glanced over his shoulder and chuckled. "Hey, maybe Elijah here can solve it for you." A few students laughed. It wasn't mean-spirited, not exactly. It was the kind of laugh people give when they don't know what else to do, like when someone drops their tray in the cafeteria and the whole room erupts. You don't mean harm, you just react. But something about the way Mr. Peters said it, it hung in the air. It wasn't what he said, it was what he meant. Elijah, standing in the doorway, paused. He was wearing his usual navy blue jumpsuit, work boots dusty from the morning trash rounds. His graying beard was neatly trimmed. He had the calm presence of someone who'd seen too much to be rattled by petty things. He gave a soft smile and looked over at the board. "That one?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. Mr. Peters raised an eyebrow, amused. "Sure. You want to give it a shot?" A couple kids snorted quietly. Elijah set the mop and dustpan to the side, wiped his hands on a rag tucked in his belt, and walked into the room. You could feel the weird tension. Half the students were waiting for a punchline. The other half were just confused. He picked up the dry erase marker. Then he started writing. Not slowly, not fumbling, not hesitating. His hands moved with confidence. First isolating the derivative, then simplifying. Step after step, his voice calm but firm, like someone giving directions to a place he'd been to 1,000 times. "See, the trick here," he said, turning to the class, "is not to get distracted by how messy it looks. Chain rule applies here, and from there, it's just patience." Mouths started to hang open. The laughter had stopped. Phones came out, quietly, discreetly. One girl whispered, "Wait, is he actually doing this?" 5 minutes passed. The problem was solved. Perfectly. Mr. Peters just stood there. No sarcasm now, just a strange silence that felt heavier than any joke he'd ever told. Elijah handed the marker back. "Hope that helps," he said gently, and walked out without another word. But the hallway didn't go back to normal, and neither did that classroom. After Elijah walked out of that classroom, the energy didn't just settle, it shifted. Students didn't go back to their notes. They stared at the whiteboard like it had just been touched by some kind of wizard. Mr. Peters eventually muttered something about resuming the lesson, but even he looked a little off, like he was trying to make sense of what just happened without admitting he was stunned. Because he was, they all were. By lunchtime, word had already traveled, fast. You know how schools work. A single rumor can travel through a hallway faster than a fire drill. By fifth period, everyone had heard at least part of the story. Elijah did calculus. Like real calculus, with confidence. Bro didn't even blink, just solved it. Yo, Mr. Peters looked shook. Someone got the whole thing on video. And just like that, the janitor everyone walked past without a second glance, who blended into the background like a vending machine or a bulletin board, had suddenly become the topic of every conversation. But not everyone was surprised. Ms. Denise Gardner, who worked in the front office, had seen Elijah reading thick math books during his breaks. Mr. Lim, the chemistry teacher, had caught him once working through an old physics textbook in the teacher's lounge on a rainy afternoon. Even the security guard, Mr. Kincaid, had said once in passing, "That guy's sharper than most of the folks on payroll." Still, nobody really knew Elijah. He came in early, left quietly, and rarely made small talk. Not rude, just private. He did his job with care. Floors always clean, windows spotless, never late, always respectful. But that day cracked something open, and the students wanted answers. By the time Elijah was emptying trash bins in the faculty parking lot after school, a small group of seniors approached him, the brave kind, the curious kind. One of them, a girl named Tasha Hollowell, said, "Mr. Brooks, how'd you learn all that? The math?" Elijah smiled, like he'd been waiting for that question for years. "I used to teach it, long time ago," he said, lifting a heavy trash bag into the bin. Tasha blinked. "You were a teacher?" "No, not officially. I tutored while I was in grad school, back when I was working on my PhD in applied mathematics." The group stared at him. "No way," one boy whispered. "You were in grad school?" Elijah nodded. "University of Michigan, on a full ride." "So, why are you here?" another asked, genuinely. "Like, here?" He paused. You could see it in his eyes, the kind of silence that holds a whole story. "My mom got sick, real bad, and I was the only one she had. Left school, came home to take care of her. Figured I'd go back later." "Did you?" Tasha asked softly. Elijah shook his head. Life had other plans, money dried up, jobs were hard to come by. Then I got this gig. It was stable, had benefits, seemed like the right call at the time. It was the kind of story you didn't expect to hear in a parking lot beside dumpsters, the kind that sits in your chest. "But I still love the math," he added, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. "Do a little each night, keeps my brain from getting lazy." He didn't say it for pity. He said it like a man who'd made peace with his path. But something about it stung anyway. But while the students walked away thinking, the video from room 208 was still making its way into the hands of people who weren't going to let it stop there. The next day, second period, room 208 was packed. Same class, same desks, same smell of dry erase markers. But something was different. Students were sitting upright, phones already on their desks, not hidden this time, but ready. Mr. Peters walked in a little slower than usual. You could see it in his shoulders. He knew he wasn't walking into just another Thursday lesson. He cleared his throat, tried to act like nothing had happened. "All right," he said, dropping his worn leather briefcase by his desk. "Let's pick up where we left off yesterday." A few heads turned toward the door. "Unless Mr. Brooks wants to teach today," someone muttered under their breath. Peters paused, just for a second. He didn't reply. He just uncapped a marker and began writing another equation. But he couldn't pretend forever. Not when the school's official Instagram page had reposted the video that morning. Not when some local teacher forums were already sharing it with captions like, "This man deserves better." That afternoon, just before lunch, something unexpected happened. Principal Valerie Reddington knocked on Mr. Peters' classroom door. With her was Elijah Brooks, hands still dusty, work gloves tucked into his back pocket. Mr. Peters opened the door, confused. "Mr. Peters," she said, polite but firm, "I hope you don't mind, but I thought it might be a good idea to invite Mr. Brooks to sit in for a few minutes today. Some of the students requested it." Requested was putting it lightly, more like begged. Comment sections were blowing up. The school couldn't ignore it anymore. Mr. Peters hesitated but stepped aside. Elijah walked in with a soft nod and sat quietly in a chair near the back, not trying to be the center of attention. For the first 15 minutes, Peters tried to push through the lesson, but the energy was different. His words fell flat. Eyes kept drifting toward Elijah. Then something wild happened. One of the students, a boy named Jordan Whitlow, raised his hand. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "could you show us how you would do this problem?" Peters looked like he might object, but he didn't. Maybe he knew better by now. Elijah stood up slowly and walked to the board. He took the marker again, but this time he turned to the class first. "Anyone want to walk me through what you already tried?" he asked. No teacher tone, no judgment, just a real question. A girl near the front raised her hand and explained her steps. He nodded, listening intently, like she was the only person in the room. When she finished, he said, "You're actually really close. Watch this." He made one small adjustment, reworked a fraction, shifted a bracket. The solution clicked into place. "Oh," the class murmured. Then he did something else. He drew a graph beside the equation, a simple visual explanation of what the numbers meant. It wasn't flashy, but it clicked. A few kids literally clapped, not to be funny, but because they understood something they'd never gotten before. And Mr. Peters? He just stood there, arms crossed, watching, quiet, still. When Elijah finished, he turned to the class. Math's not about speed, he said. It's about patience, and knowing that mistakes are part of the work. That one sentence, it hit deeper than anything the whiteboard had seen all year. But Elijah didn't know the assistant superintendent had just walked in at the back of the room to watch it all for himself. By 3:15 p.m., the final bell rang and students poured into the hallways, buzzing, not with gossip or weekend plans, but with questions, whispers, and laughter that sounded different, less petty, more alive. Everyone had seen the video by now, not just the first one from the day before, but a brand new one from that morning. The one where Elijah broke down a calculus problem in real time and got half the class to actually understand it. It was shaky, filmed on Jordan Whitlow's phone from behind a water bottle. But it didn't matter. The message was clear. The janitor was teaching, and the teacher was watching. That evening, the video made its way to Twitter, then Facebook, then TikTok. The caption? Our janitor just embarrassed our calculus teacher and taught us more in 10 minutes than we've learned all year. It wasn't mean-spirited, more like stunned respect. People were tagging news outlets, education blogs, math nerd pages. Everyone wanted to know, who is Elijah Brooks? By midnight, the video had over 200,000 views. The comments section was on fire. This man's a genius. Why is he cleaning floors instead of running a classroom? Bro probably forgot more math than I ever learned. Find this man a teaching license and cut him a check. Somebody please tell me this is getting fixed. He belongs at the board, not behind a mop. Even a professor from Ohio State retweeted it, adding, "This man clearly knows his stuff, would love to talk." Elijah didn't have Twitter. He didn't know how TikTok worked, but his niece, Tamara, who lived 2 towns over, saw the video and called him. "You're famous," she said, laughing. "You break the internet today or what?" He chuckled. "I just helped some kids understand a problem." "Unk," she said, "you don't get it. This is big." By the next morning, things had changed. The district office had received over 50 emails overnight. Reporters started calling the school asking for comment. Teachers who barely spoke to Elijah before were suddenly offering him coffee in the lounge. The assistant superintendent, Dr. Miriam Voss, called a meeting with the school's principal. She wanted to know everything. "Why is this man not in the classroom?" she asked. Principal Reddington tried to explain. "He applied once, years ago. Didn't have his credentials completed. We kept him on staff because he was reliable." "Well," Dr. Voss said, looking out the window at a group of students still talking about the video, "we might want to revisit that." But what neither of them knew yet was the full truth behind Elijah's story, and just how close he had come to being someone completely different. The following week, Elijah walked into work like he always did, quiet, early, head down, same dark blue uniform, same thermos of black coffee in hand. But the building was different now. Kids nodded at him in the hallway. A few even smiled, like they didn't quite know how to talk to him but wanted to. Teachers waved. Some tried too hard. Others avoided eye contact like they were embarrassed. "Mr. Peters?" He stayed polite, but distant. What Elijah didn't expect was the invitation taped to his locker that Friday morning. A printed letter with the school seal at the top. "You are cordially invited to speak at the Lincoln Heights High School Career Day." He read it twice. It wasn't a prank. Principal Reddington signed it herself. Later that day, she stopped him in the hallway. "We want the students to hear your story," she said. "Your real story." He hesitated. "You sure about that?" She nodded. "More than sure." So, on the day of the event, Elijah didn't wear his jumpsuit. He came in wearing a dark brown blazer, slightly faded at the cuffs, and slacks that still held a sharp crease, clothes he hadn't worn in over a decade. The auditorium wasn't full, but it was close. Juniors and seniors mostly. Teachers lined the walls. Some kids expected a math lecture. Others just came because they heard he was the janitor who went viral. But what they got was something else entirely. Elijah stepped up to the mic, took a breath, then began. "My name's Elijah Brooks. I'm 57. I've worked here at Lincoln Heights for 11 years. Some of you know me as the guy who cleans your classrooms, but before that..." He paused, letting the silence hold for a beat. I was a student, just like you. Grew up in Lansing, raised by my mom. Never knew my dad. I was good at numbers, really good. Went to the University of Michigan on a full scholarship. Almost made it to my PhD. He told them about the nights he spent tutoring freshman athletes to pay rent, about the professors who told him he had something special, about the dreams he had of becoming a researcher, maybe even teaching at a university. Then he told them about the phone call that changed everything. My mom had a stroke. I was in the middle of a final. I left right after. Never went back. He didn't sugarcoat it. He talked about caregiving, watching savings disappear, the job market that didn't care about context, about the first time he applied to Lincoln Heights, not as a teacher, but as a custodian, because he needed steady hours and insurance. I figured I'd be here a few months, he said, but time moves fast when you're not paying attention. The room was silent. Every word sat heavy, but honest. But I never stopped learning. That's the part nobody sees. The work never left me. I just stopped being seen as someone who could do it. A few students had tears in their eyes, even some teachers. He ended with this. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's this. Just because someone cleans your classroom doesn't mean they couldn't teach it. Look twice, ask questions, and don't ever let life's detours make you forget who you are. But while the auditorium rose in a standing ovation, someone was already drafting an email that would bring everything full circle. Monday morning hit different. The applause from Career Day still echoed through the building like it had left something behind, something bigger than pride or shock. It felt like a mirror had been placed in front of the whole school, and people didn't quite know how to look into it. By lunch, students were talking about more than just Elijah. They were talking about how many Elijahs they'd probably ignored. How many people they passed by every day without knowing a thing about their story. Custodians, cafeteria workers, even each other. Something had shifted. Mr. Peters was the first staff member to knock on the custodial break room door that afternoon. Elijah looked up from his sandwich, peanut butter, no jelly, crusts neatly trimmed, and gave a faint smile. "Mind if I sit?" Peters asked. Elijah nodded. "Have a seat." For a second, neither of them said much. Then Peters let out a breath. "I owe you an apology." Elijah raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For making that joke," Peters said. "It wasn't funny. Not then, not now. Truth is, I didn't expect you to know the answer. And that says more about me than it ever did about you." Elijah nodded slowly. "I've heard worse, but thank you." Peters leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You ever think about coming back to teaching? I mean, really doing it?" "I never stopped wanting to," Elijah said. "I just stopped believing the door was open." It was quiet again, but not for long. Later that week, Dr. Voss from the district office invited Elijah in for a meeting. This time, he wasn't there to fix a sink or clean a spill. He was there to talk options. She smiled warmly. "Mr. Brooks, we'd like to help you complete your teaching credentials. We'll sponsor the process, support you through it. You already have the experience. We just want to make it official." Elijah sat back, stunned. "Why now?" Dr. Voss didn't blink. "Because it's the right thing to do. And honestly, it should have happened a long time ago." The process wasn't overnight. There were forms to sign, refresher courses to take, boxes to check. But the momentum was real. Students started a petition to make him a permanent staff instructor. It gained over 1,000 signatures in 3 days. Even the school board weighed in, pushing for fast-track approval. People who never said a word to Elijah before now stopped him in the hallway to shake his hand. Teachers began rethinking their own assumptions, not just about him, but about their students, their coworkers, the world outside their narrow lane. Something real had changed. But the biggest moment was still waiting for him at the next school board meeting, where Elijah's name would be called for something he never thought he'd hear again. The next school board meeting was held in the Lincoln Heights High School gymnasium, because for the first time in years, they needed more chairs. Folding seats lined the walls. Teachers, students, staff, and parents all filled the space, buzzing with quiet anticipation. Some were holding signs. Others clutched printed copies of Elijah's video transcripts like they were historical documents. Up front, at a long folding table, the board members sat in a row, nameplates polished, microphones on. At the center sat Dr. Miriam Voss, who opened the meeting with a calm, steady voice. We've gathered here tonight to vote on a proposal that affects not only our district's future, but reflects what kind of institution we want to be. She looked directly at Elijah, seated quietly in the front row, suit jacket buttoned, hands folded in his lap. We are here to decide whether Mr. Elijah Brooks will be offered a permanent role as an instructor in the Lincoln Heights Mathematics Department, pending completion of the remaining certification requirements, which the board has agreed to support and expedite. A murmur swept through the crowd. It was happening. For real. Each board member spoke, briefly, respectfully, all in favor. When the vote came in, it was unanimous. Cheers erupted. No one waited for formalities. Students jumped to their feet. Teachers clapped. A few parents wiped away tears they didn't expect. Even Mr. Peters stood and applauded, eyes fixed on the man who had rewritten the definition of respect in that very building. Elijah didn't stand right away. He just closed his eyes for a moment, like he was letting it all sink in. All the years, all the steps, all the times he'd walked the halls, wondering if anyone would ever really see him. After the meeting, someone handed him the mic. He cleared his throat, looked out at the crowd, not just a sea of faces, but a room full of people who, for once, were truly listening. "I used to think I missed my chance," he said. "That maybe life made its choice for me and I just had to live with it. But what I've learned is that sometimes your moment doesn't pass you by. Sometimes it's just waiting for everyone else to catch up." He glanced toward the back, where his niece Tamara stood recording it all on her phone, grinning wide. "I'm thankful for every hallway I cleaned, every trash bin I emptied. Not because I loved the job, but because I learned patience, humility, and how to carry myself even when no one was watching." Then he looked directly at the students. "And for anyone sitting here who feels invisible, maybe you're not the loudest in the room, maybe nobody knows your story yet, I just want to say, don't count yourself out. Life has a way of bringing things back around if you keep showing up with your full self." A long pause. No one moved. "And to the teachers in the room," he added with a small smile, "don't assume a man with a mop in his hand doesn't understand the math on your board." The crowd laughed, soft, real laughter this time. The kind that comes after something hard has been healed. That night, Elijah walked out of the gym, not just as a man who cleaned classrooms, but as someone who had reminded an entire community that knowledge, potential, and dignity don't always come wrapped in a suit and tie. Sometimes they show up in work boots. We all carry stories. Some just take longer to be heard. The question is, are you listening? If this story made you think twice about someone in your life you've overlooked, share it. Talk about it. Better yet, reach out to that person and ask their story. You might be surprised what you learn. And if you're the one feeling unseen, don't stop showing up. Your moment might be closer than you think.